Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan. We're here with a brand new episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon, the show where I bring on guests who worked in and around the tabletop gaming industry, focused a lot on the tabletop role playing games, and we talk about the industry and our careers and what's going on with the idea about wow. It's off to a good start today, with a focus on the fact that we have just passed the 50th anniversary of the industry. 50 years of gaming, and as I like to say, I mean I've been gaming for 45 of those years. So usually between us, we have somewhere around 100 years of experience in a 50-year industry, which is a good math trick anyway. So yes, and while we chat, I usually will be doing a cartoon homage, be drawing a cartoon homage to a piece of uh, either related or classic game art, and that's the fun of it. That's kind of the magic touch, and yeah, that's what it's all about. Now, if you're tuning in here, you probably know that, but I like to do these intros because every once in a while we get new people. Hello, Surreptitious. Thank you for joining in. Glad to see you, my friend. Um, it's been a while. Most of the summer I've been doing the work in progress shows, and I still have a few more of those to do where I'm catching up on drawings begun in previous episodes. But tonight, we're doing a brand new interview, which is all kinds of fun. I'm trying to get my interview host chops back on because believe it or not, there's a difference between those kind of shows. For me, it's kind of what headspace I have to be in, what kind of focus I have to be in. But I'm very excited because my guests tonight, those of you who watch know, a lot of my guests are people that I've known for quite a long time and worked alongside. Tonight is someone that I'm just meeting for the first time today. Although I've been very aware of the work he's done and very much a fan of the work he's done over the years. We've never met, so this is kind of a real introduction conversation. Hello, Michael Pastor. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good to see you. I got your question in the email, and I've got it here on the side of the screen so I can remember to ask it at some point. Just so you know. I guess that's as good a segue as any to tell folks that we have a free newsletter at 50yearsinthe.dungeon.substack.com. And if you are a subscriber there, you get the opportunity to send questions in for our guests ahead of time. And if you're a paid subscriber, then your questions go to the top of the queue. On the other hand, if you just show up in the live chat, you can ask anything you want, and we'll probably answer it. So, without any further ado, let me say that tonight's guest is a game designer who's been working for Kobold Press since their very earliest days. Before they were even Kobold Press, they were just called Open Design, and has been working on products for and with them all of this time. Also a successful screenwriter for television and movies and streaming shows and other things. And just a fun guy. Like I say, it's my first time meeting him today. We were just doing a pre-show and chatting with him. I'm very much looking forward to an hour hanging out with Brian Suskind. Now I'm going to not hit the button correctly. There we go. Brian Suskind. Thank you, Brian, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great. The fact that people have already sent in questions is filling me with dread.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I will also tell you that Michael's the only one that did. But he's here, and he sent in a question. But also, he sends in his question is 8 paragraphs long. So,
right. Okay, that's fair. That'll fill the time. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate
it. So, for folks who don't know, I mentioned that before Kobold Press was Kobold Press, it was Open Design. Let's just start with that. What does that mean?
So in the way before times, in the depths of time, back before Kickstarter was a thing, Wolfgang Bauer was trying to figure out a way to introduce people to gaming and maybe, there's sort of a little sideline for him. and he used LiveJournal, if anyone actually remembers what that is. And you would like pay a couple bucks, and you get to look over his shoulder as he was doing game design. And I was trying to remember how I stumbled upon it, and I think that if it wasn't that there was an ad, somebody mentioned it somewhere, and I went, "Oh, that sounds kind of cool." I was already working in the film industry, and I'm always been interested in writing, and so I was like, I'm gonna check that out. And the next thing I know, it was very much like it was just like a message board, really. He had a couple different threads, and you would reply to stuff, and every so often he would like, "Hey, there's gonna be a paladin in this next thing. Anybody have any idea? Let's throw some ideas around." And you throw ideas around. The funny part about it is there's a lot of those ideas that became later Kobold Press products. And like you could still look back at some of the old LiveJournal ones, and I went back and I found some of them. I'm like, oh yeah, this became this project, and this became this project, and Wolfgang really just taught all of us who were there how to design, and not so much like mechanics, because that changes, but the philosophy of it. And his most important rule, which was, where's the adventure? Like anything you write, and he still says this today, anything you write, look at it, where's the adventure in that? You could write 120 pages of clothing rules, or
Right.
but where's the adventure in that? And a lot of those lessons have stuck with me since then.
Yeah, that's one of the things I worked at a few different companies. I hate saying that. Publishers in house, and one of the best things about it is that kind of that writers' room feeling, right? That you're just
Yeah.
describing. And people, you just kind of throw ideas around, and they maybe they'll turn into something right now. Maybe they'll get chewed over and come back later. But the just having conversations with people that unlock those kinds of thoughts,
Yeah.
right? It's got to be the event. Where's the adventure? Where's the fun? Right?
Well, and
Who's going to
that's the
use that?
goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, anyone can. No, I'm going to say anyone, but it's very hard to sit by yourself in your writer cave and just typety type away and produce something that's good. You can do it; people do it
Yeah.
all the time, but it really doesn't shine until you start showing it to people. And when you show it to a group, and they go, "Well, have you thought about doing this? What about that
Yeah.
thing? What if you
Yeah.
what if you had this guy and you turned it around?" Then it becomes much more interesting. I'm a big believer in collaboration,
Right.
and you know, the more people that I can get on a project, the better. Until I say that until editing happens, and then I'm like, oh god, there's so many things.
Yeah.
But that's a future Brian problem.
I also really like the question of where's the adventure for me is uh, um, a a better watchword than another one that used to get thrown around a lot at uh, at TSR and at Wizards and other unrelated groups that I've talked to, which was it used to be the question was, how does that help me kill an orc better?
Right.
Right. And there's similar things, but that's so focused on the mechanical and the combat that
Right.
it's narrow. It's an aspect of where's the adventure, but where's the adventure is that broadened out more into what we're seeing being more important in gaming as years go by, which is the narrative, right? Whether
Well, and
yeah,
it's, I mean, that's a great point, because I've noticed recently that, well, not recently, last couple of years, but that people who play lots of different games have different ways of talking about it. Somebody might say, well, how does it help me kill an orc? But I hear it most often when people say there's not enough role playing in that system for me.
yeah,
And it always bothered me, because people would say it about D&D, and I'd go, I can role play a phone book. Like, the rules to me
right,
don't matter for Dungeons and Dragons, like to role playing. Like, I can role play anything. But and when I was talking to somebody at a local con here, and I mentioned that this was frustrating, because I was talking to a lot of indie game designers and who are generally very critical of D&D, which for probably some good reasons. But a lot of the comments were, there's not enough role playing. And I'm like, rules aren't role playing. Role playing is what you bring to the game. And what this guy said to me was like, oh, that's not what they mean. They're saying there's not enough role playing, but what they mean is narrative control. And it was such an eye opener because narrative control is the hallmark of indie gaming.
Right. But even that in D&D, it's the problem or the challenge that they're rising up to is that if you don't have rules for that kind of thing, it's incumbent upon, if you have the right DM or GM, depending on the game, you can have narrative control with D&D, or
Sure.
you could have narrative control with I don't know, with Warhammer, right? You can have it, right, if you've got the right person who's leading it. The games, there's a whole new type of game, and I've been having this conversation a lot recently, that there's a new type of game which clearly is a role-playing game. Clearly is. But it's focused on a different thing, and it's focused on it's just as it feels to me like it is a different subgenre. The ones that focus on narrative control primarily, that's what you're doing. And in fact, we're playing. We recently played 2 games like this. Brindlewood Bay. I don't know if you. That's relatively known. Brindlewood Bay, and we're playing Blades in the Dark right now.
Oh yeah, those are 2 classics.
But the group, we've got a group of people who come completely out of the D&D Call of Cthulhu
How'd that go?
aspect, who used to playing that way, and so they want the DM, the GM, to know what the answers are.
Right, and Brindlewood Bay is absolutely...
And Brindlewood Bay and Blades in the Dark, they don't. And we're having a great time. Like, we're learning. It's taken a while. It took a while for me. Like, I understood it in theory, but it took 6 or 7 weeks of playing before I really kind of to click on what that means. And I'm not sure I'm still not sure how much I like that kind of game as what I want to do on a regular basis. I really get it, and I like it.
So
but
Michael in chat was asking what narrative control means, and what these games basically are. It's basically you're the GM at certain points. You're making the decisions. In Brindlewood Bay, and if you don't know what Brindlewood Bay is, you play old ladies in a small village who are a murder mystery book club, and they solve actual murder mysteries.
It's like Murder She Wrote, the role playing game.
Yeah,
kind of.
But yeah, for these games, the narrative control is your, like in Brindlewood Bay, there's no murder. Like, they set up the murder, but they don't tell you who did it. Yeah. I had a hard time. Yeah, Glitchy Bite was saying I had a hard time. They had a hard time with
Glitchy Bite is in my group. So
okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, I just met him, and I'm sorry.
I know. He's got to put up with me in person. It's really yeah.
But it was
guide on the cookie.
I was facilitating the game, and I got to the part where it was like, there's no who did it, and it's like, well, the players decide. I'm like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah. No, it is. It's like I say. I really think that these are a different kind of game, and it's problematic that the word role playing game is what both types of games are. Not because either one deserves it more than the other. They both are clearly role-playing games. But role-playing game is now a bigger umbrella, and we need different terms for these different types of gameplay.
Now, when I was having this conversation about narrative control, the person I was talking to said, well, that's why these indie games are so good at it, because you can't really do that with a game like Dungeons and Dragons. And I went, challenge accepted. So I have been progressively, working on. Oh, hey, one of my kid gamers. I'll tell you about them in a bit. But I took it as a challenge because I love it when my players take narrative control. I love
Right.
it when they're like, okay, but around this corner is a tavern. I'm like, you're in a labyrinth, but there's a tavern. I'm like, great, let's go with that. Um, and so I've been progressively working on various ways, especially in my home games, to do it. Like in my home game, I have something called a narrative control point, and it's like it's just this chip, and if you trade it in, you tell me what happens. You can't be like,
Right.
I find a ring of three wishes. I can always change that, but mainly it's they take control. And I was inspired by a newer RPG called Outgunned, which
Yeah.
is a lot of fun if you
We've
play.
been
If you've ever
talking
played
about that. I haven't read it yet, but we've been talking about it.
Outgunned is it's your favorite '90s action movie. The rule book reads like well, if you're too old to put up with this crap, or you're crawling through air ducts at Christmas time. I mean, it is all the movies you know. Um, the uh, but it has it's kind of a Yahtzee system, dice pool, and
Right.
it's you get all if your all dice are all the same. It says you become the GM and resolve the scene. Period. And then it moves on to something else. That's the entire rule,
Right.
which is maybe a little much, but it inspired me. I'm like, if you could make it work in that, you could make it work in anything. The hard part about narrative control games to me is that, and this is also about like Blades in the Dark and Brindlewood Bay and a lot of indie games, is that they're not really set up for long campaigns.
Yeah.
I love long campaigns. Like the first campaign I ever ran, we played every week for 7 years.
Right.
And I love those. I love figuring out these long narrative arcs. It's the whole screenwriting thing.
Right.
And actually, Void the Chaos Gremlin, who's in chat, is one of my kid gamers. I'm running them through that campaign. I found all my notes, and
Right.
when I say notes, I prepare games much differently now than I did then. Now I have about 5 minutes, and I go, okay, what do I want to do this game? And then everything else is improv. Back then, I scripted it because I was in film school,
Right.
and it's like scripts like this, you know. So I'm running them through it, and it's a riot because I'm looking through, going, oh, I would never write it like this now. I'd never do this, But the problem is that these games aren't set up for long play, and it has nothing to do with narrative control necessarily. It's just that games like Powered by the Apocalypse, there is some advancement, but it's not really set up the way like D&D is, and mostly it's about because of levels. Or in Call of Cthulhu, it's your skills you're building up. If you don't have a measurement by which to track how you're improving, it becomes very wishy-washy. Even like Cypher has their tiers.
Yeah.
But Cypher's weird. Cypher is bizarre.
Cypher is.
I love it.
Yeah. No. I love Cypher. I've been talking about running a short Cypher system thing for our group for a while. I just haven't gotten off my butt and done it. All right. Before we continue, I'm going to switch over here, and while we chat, I'm going to be drawing a cartoon homage to the Northland Sagas book, which is currently being kickstarted
right now.
It's being kickstarted right now. If you go over to koboldpress.com and follow the links to Northlands, it'll take you to the Kickstarter. There's a new world book, and this is a book of adventures. This covers for the book, which is the book of adventures.
This is Kobold Press's first real adventure path. Wolfgang has resisted them for many years, and I finally convinced him to do it. So all the adventures are meant to be played back, one after the other. Loki hires you pesky adventurers to help him stop Ragnarok, which he has inadvertently started, because he's Loki, and you go from levels like 1 to 12, and it begins in the snowy north and ends with the siege of Valhalla or siege of Asgard, where you're trying to rechain Fenris. So a lot of stuff happens.
So, I mean, despite what I said about us going through our usual conversation about beginning of career and on, those who've watched the show know that I often do that. Like we're already deep into something which is more complex, and let's just keep going with it.
All right.
Because I mean,
So
one of the things you just said about this is this kind of thing, this kind of saga that starts with X and leads to Y, does not do well under these open narrative systems. Like those, it's a big challenge to run something like that has that, even if it's just a touch point thing.
well, I mean, you can if it's an external thing. The problem is it's when it's an internal. Like if it's just if it's you have to take the magic acorn from here to the islands of whatever, and sacrifice it to the Ratatas god or
Right.
whatever your adventure happens to be. Um, Michael wants to learn about Baby Brian. Oh boy. Um, we can get back to that. The problem is it's like that. You can do that in a Powered by the Apocalypse or narrative control game. The harder part is when you finish that adventure and you want to do another one with the same characters. There's the advancement is sort of wishy-washy. There's like you after you get a couple, it's all the same. It's not like in D&D or some of these other systems where you have these levels to look forward to. Oh, I can't wait till I get to this level and I can get to this ability, or I can, and it is just a different style of gaming, and there's nothing wrong with it. People, I
Right.
know lots of people just do one shots and they love it, and it's great. I love one shots, but I also love these long, super long campaigns. We're talking about Cipher system. We're playing Invisible Sun as one of. I have a game group at home. We've gamed every Monday for 20 years. The same group, and we have 3 games in rotation at the moment: Star Trek, Eberron, Invisible Sun. 3 games. Um,
Okay.
and Invisible Sun, I don't understand. I mean, I understand the rules at Cipher, but like what it's about is crazy. And at Gen Con, I was talking to some people who have played it, and I was talking to some people at the Monty Cook booth, and the general gist that I get as to how this game came to be, it's if you can imagine Monty Cook emerging from the desert holding a sheaf of paper, and he says, "I have envisioned a book." And that's how big it's like an ayahuasca drug trip with rules. And yeah, it is crazy. Like it's hard to even explain how crazy it is. But so I think narrative control has a place in a D&D or Tales of the Valiant game, or even Call of Cthulhu. It's it's the question of scope. If it's completely open ended and the GM can't, or the keeper can't step in and say, okay, here's where the lines are, then you could probably get into trouble with the wrong kind of group, because that's when it's like, and we won. It's like, well, that's
Right.
a short game. Um, the what I've been tried to do, and my kid gamers are my guinea pigs with this, is with their narrative control point is, you get to resolve the scene, and I'll guide them. It's a lot of yes but or yes and answers to whatever they're doing. Um, I should say my kid gamers. I started a game for my son and his friends during COVID.
Right.
Shortly before COVID, and then COVID hit, and I started running it 3 days a week. My wife called it my community service because these kids are stuck at home and they had nothing to do. So I started running it 3 days a week, like on Zoom, and we're still playing like once a week since then. Um, and they are a crazy, crazy bunch of gremlins. Yes, there's Madison. Right. They've named their current party. They name themselves the Minor Inconveniences, which I think is a great name for an adventuring party. So yeah, I mean, how we think about games has changed in the last 50 years. When I started, I was a 3.5, a 3.5, and so it was, and then we moved to Pathfinder, and now we're here. Now we're here at Tales of the Valiant. The system, but rules are. Let me put it this way: the more I've gained, and the more I've designed, the less I need rules.
Right.
I need to know them, So, it's sort of like when I was in film school, you need to know what the 3 act structure is so you can then know when not to use it. And it's sort of the same thing, but everybody needs to be on the same set of rules because that's how this game works. I've played with people who are new to it, and they're like, well, why can't I just do this? And someone will say, well, because it's not in the rules. Well, but you said I could do whatever I want. And it's like, yeah, but we all have to be on the same page or else this doesn't work. It's like if we're playing Parcheesi and you're playing Chutes and Ladders, it's going to be a weird ride. Oh, yes, I will be running the Minor Inconveniences through the Northlands at some point. So buckle up. Yeah, narrative control, I'm a big fan. I think that the more, and maybe this is just because I'm lazy. I'm going to be brutally honest. Running games is hard, and I phone it in a lot. But no, I don't. But the more the players add to the game in terms of like not just what their characters are doing, but add to the world, add to this kind of communal storytelling thing we're doing, I think the more invested they are in the game, which is why you see a lot of sort of pre-gaming that happens now. There's things like Decima, which is this kind of tarot card world building thing. And it's like they call it the R&D for your D&D, and it's like builds those character connection cards. Or you have games like Microscope, where you're building worlds before you play, and all of it is to create character investment. That's I don't know about you, Stan, but like when I started gaming, session 0 was whenever you showed up. There wasn't a session 0. It was like whoever was there. That's when 0 was.
Right. Now
it's a thing. Like it's in the books to have a session 0, and I think we're better for it. So it's just the kind of the idea of the game as we've gotten more people involved, it's changed.
I think part of what you're saying is that as the hobby has matured, we know that people are coming in with more understanding to begin with, right? The first time anyone is playing, they don't want a session 0. They're doing this like any other game they played before. They want you to hand them what they need and tell them what to roll and what their options are and what to do. And the more as they go along and they learn, I want to do this thing, and just what you were saying there, you then have this conversation of, well, it's not in the rules, but you can do this, or you can try that, but it may not work.
Are you sticking your head in the bucket?
Yeah. And
always answer a question with a question. It's like GM rule number 1. Can I go in the room? Are you going in the room?
If you'd like to. Well, what happens? Well, you find out if you go
in first. Yeah. I mean, and I think, yeah, I mean, it used to be like when you played Tomb of Horrors, it honestly didn't matter what your character was because they weren't going to survive very long anyway. Now I write character histories, and I have one of my players who runs one of the games, one of the rotating games. We often will challenge each other with our character histories. We had one campaign they were going on. I was playing in hers and she was playing in mine, and we did each of us did that 100-page character questionnaire that was floating around online for a while.
Oh God, yeah.
And we did it, and it was a lot of information. We incorporated a lot of it into our games, but you have to have the right group. I mean, there's some groups that don't care about that stuff.
Yeah,
and they want to discover who their character is as they go along. And there's something to be said about having a character arc. My characters always have character arcs. Sometimes I don't know where they're going, but I always sort of start off with the characters that have a problem. Because let's face it, if your character had a perfectly wonderful childhood and it lived in a safe environment, was loved, had plenty to eat, there was nothing ever bad ever happened, there's no reason for them to become an adventurer. Like, why are you murdering for money if you have a perfectly fine at home? you know, like murder hoboing is not for the weak. So it's like
Well,
I always like characters that are broken. I started off that they're broken. Um, I'm playing in an online game where I'm playing this halfling, and it has slowly come out that his family is dead, but he has not talked about it. It's only come out because it's the other players have realized that I've avoided answering certain questions, and they've slowly started piecing it together, and I haven't said a word about it. They'll ask in character directly, and I will avoid the subject. So yeah, I mean, I love characters that are broken because they're interesting. And if you're not playing this game because you want an interesting character, you might be doing it wrong.
well, except that there are people that just want to come and kick down the door and kill some monsters and get their treasure,
But
and
those
that's
characters are interesting to them.
yeah,
They love those characters. Like the Conan hack and slash. I don't know why I'm a barbarian wearing a loincloth in the snow, but I'm doing it because that's my character.
right.
It's like, and that is perfectly valid. Those games are great. Like the old Tower of Gygax level, where you're gonna hack and slash your way through. Why not? And if that's the game you want, this industry will deliver. And if you want a more nuanced, involved character arc game, this industry can deliver that too.
Right.
And I think that goes back to what you were talking about, Stan, with like now we have this bigger umbrella that is covering lots of different games.
Right. I think, the challenge. I think one of the challenges we have is just a challenge of nomenclature, right?
Yeah.
Of saying I want to play a role playing game, and that could mean one of three distinct paths, all of which are valid, fun, and deserving of the name role playing game.
Yeah.
But if one person wants to kick in the door and kill orcs, and the other person wants to write 100-page synopsis of their character and their hopes, their past, their current situation, and their hopes and dreams, they don't mean the same thing, or they
and that's sort of what the session zero has become. It's become like, let's get everybody on the same page here. And it also, because it also depends on your GM. Some GMs have certain ways they want to run games. Some people are into the character arcs thing. Some people are like, no, this is going to be much more of a, find the 5 pieces of whatever it is and save the world.
Yeah.
I tend to roll with my players. Like if they go off on a tangent, I'll be like, yeah, let's see where that goes. Void the Chaos Gremlin is in a game that I run and has turned a seagull into an explosive device in order to break into a room that she didn't need to break into. So, and I was that was like a half an hour to 45 minutes of game time of that. And it is still moments that we talk about, 2 years later.
Oh yeah, you know what? I think whichever version you are playing, or in any of these versions, you wind up talking about this thing that no one planned for, and it took it took too long, and everyone was there for every second of it.
I once had it in my one of my early game. I can't remember which campaign it was. I decided that I was going to create a dungeon that was broken. I had this idea in my head that there was like, look, what happens if you have a dungeon and no one's maintaining it? Like somebody has set up this dungeon, they put all the traps and they have the monsters and all this stuff, but then no one came back. Like obviously it'll break down after a couple hundred years, magic aside. And so I was like, they had found this thing, and it was kind of off the cuff. They had, turned left when I thought they were going to go right, and they're like, was there anything? And someone rolled real well, and they discovered this entrance, and I went, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. And everything was broken. Like, but they didn't quite realize it. So it would be like a swinging scythe trap would come down, but it was all rusted and it didn't really hit anybody because it was just terrible, or it shattered when it hit like the shield of the paladin. And at one point, they encountered a door in this hallway that was carved with runes, And I really played up the description just because I thought it was funny. And the door had no visible handle or like, mechanism to open it, but it was all
Right.
carved and the walls were carved. They spent 2 hours of actual game time trying to figure out this door. And it was just stuck. I had written down that the door was stuck. They just had to put like strength check. And I will admit that after about 10 minutes, I started going, I should give them a roll here or give them a clue. But then I somehow, like, you have that evil devil on your shoulder going, no, let's see how long it takes them.
How long will they keep banging their head against this?
And maybe it wasn't 2 hours, maybe it was an hour, but it was certainly a good hour. And I just sat back and, like, would answer questions. And they're like, so there's no handle. No, there's no handle. And they got close a couple times, and they never pushed. And finally, one of my players goes, oh, wait a second. They gave me the dirtiest look I've ever seen. And goes, I pushed the door. I'm like, okay, make a strength check. Push the door open. And like all of them, where it was like the groans were echoing through the room. So yeah. Excuse me. So yeah, I mean those are the moments that you want. And you can get those moments in a one-off game, you can get those moments in a long game. And, those are just moments. I think it's harder to have those moments if you're too scripty, if you're too railroady. Unless it's because then it's written in, and sometimes it's hard to force those moments. I've tried to design those moments in my own games, like my home games, and they never happen. Like, it's very hard. I mean, even as a screenwriter, it is, I won't say never. I've done it. But it takes lead. Like, and that's why I like long games. If I can foreshadow a moment, then I'll do it a year in advance if I know that it's coming, and I'll build it up. I had a game where one of the players, her character, her mom had died giving birth to her, and her father, she had this whole backstory, and her father had hated her because of that, and then her brother had died. And during the course of the adventure, she discovered that the father had resurrected the brother as a death knight, and like she was out to kind of kill him. And I never planned this at the beginning of the campaign, but 7 years later, her mother, turns out, was not dead and was leading this Gith armada to basically invade. And she had to go deal with this parent that she'd been pining for this whole time. It was a moment, and she got to kill her father, who she hated. And it was a moment that I had foreshadowed for a year. And so you can pull off those moments. It's very hard to pull them off off the cuff, which is why one-off games for me sometimes fall flat, because you can't have those. Like, if there's no build-up enough.
I get, yeah, I see that. I think that one of the things you're pointing to is the fact that so for me, say that I don't feel good making a broad statement. For me, what I would imagine if, in a situation like that, and I've had things that are parallel, where I've planned that there's going to be a Gith armada invasion. Like, I know that's where it's going. What the players do allow me to attach the meaning to it that makes it have the kind of resonance that you're talking about. Like, I wouldn't have known it would have been one of the players' moms, but that worked out great, so it is. But whether it was that player's mom or someone else, the story cycle was going to go there.
That's the best. There's the best term for that I ever heard was the illusion of choice.
Yeah. This is going to happen. What it means and what it means to you guys, you'll help me figure out along the way.
And I'm going to burst some if you don't know this at home, I'm going to burst your bubble here a little bit. Sometimes GMs don't know what's going to happen. And
sometimes,
like when you go left and they had this whole temple complex to the right, sometimes they'll just pick it up and put it over here. Like,
yeah,
yes, it was always going to be there if you turned left, he said in hindsight. I mean, it's one of those things. Michael in chat was saying, How have I avoided railroading with an adventure path? Okay, well, that becomes it's an interesting question, because the nature of a published adventure is that it's railroading. It is, because that's the nature of it. I mean, it's very, you can do even a sandbox adventure is still putting rails down, because it is something that is written. Your hope as a designer is that, yeah, the players know they're on a railroad, but they're okay. They're like, yeah, this is a train I wanted to get on.
That's the agreement. Going back to the session 0, and the group agreement is we're going to play this adventure, which means we're on this track in this case.
And there are elements that you want to avoid, and I think I want to say I managed it all except for one instance in the Northlands. Like, what you don't want is the unkillable bad guy, because you know that he has to be there at the end for the big conclusion. Like, you don't want that guy, because let's face it, players are very clever, and sometimes, or a lot of times, the thing that you think will beat up on them and then run away, they kill with one shot, and you're like, whoops. So a lot of times what I'll do in an adventure, and in Northlands we do this, we give options. Like, if they kill this guy, use this, here's a name of the next higher lieutenant in the bad guys that will take over. But better yet, the better answer is you don't put that bad guy you don't want to be killed in a situation where the players are going to kill him.
Yeah, don't let them get to him.
Yeah. That is a great quote. There's nothing wrong with a railroad if the train is going to Awesome Town. That is 100% true. And one of the ways
before you go off that, the thing is, kind of to play off what you were saying, if everyone agrees they're getting on a train, then being on a railroad is what they expect. If they think they're getting on a pick your other mode of transportation, right? They think they're walking. If they think they're walking down to the store and it turns out they're on a railroad they can't get off, they're pissed.
Right. And that's just it. It's like, and I think when you're playing a published adventure is much different than when you're playing your home open world game. Most of my home games tend to be just open sandbox games. Players, they can take their characters wherever they want. If they're on a quest and they want to completely abandon it and open a tavern at the beach, this will become a different kind of a game. And it's because they're running the game. Like, or they're not running I'm running the game, but they're leading the game. They're driving it, and it's better if they're driving it. But when you're playing a published game, the conceit is that you've already agreed to this. So these are the rules, and these are the events that happen in the thing that you've agreed to do. If you go off of that, that's beyond the scope of this game or of this adventure. Like in Northlands, if they decide like, well, we're just going to go reaving for a while, we're going to ignore this Ragnarok thing, they certainly can. It's just I don't provide game material for that.
Right.
Well, I take that back. There's an entire reaving rule set in the main book. You can either play it as downtime rules, or you could play it as encounters, or both, like a mix and match. So yes, in that sense, I do provide reaving rules, but like in sagas, there's not like a sidebar that says, well, if they decide to abandon this and go off over here, advice for tips for new GMs trying to write their own campaigns. Start small.
That's good advice.
Because here's the thing. It's like my daughter, who is she's a super creative person. She's studying archaeology and at college, and she's running a game, and she has a zillion ideas, and they're amazing. But I think she feels a lot of it is, this is her story, and she's telling it. And I gently tried to say to her, it's not. These are the players' story. You're facilitating that and providing material for their story, but it's really their story. Um, writing your own campaign is the same thing. You know, she is very cool. When you're starting a campaign, I will often think about like where I want this to go down the road, but you never know where it's going to go if you're running an open world game. You know, yeah, the players will expand the narrative in the ways they want. Yeah, you know, we sometimes we'll call it following the elves based on an incident where we were supposed to have a meetup, the first characters in the first game, and 3 of the players just followed this random elf out of the bar and left. And so, like, you never know what players are going to do. So, and in the same thing in a campaign, it's like you never know what the party is going to be doing. You can drop hints and like, wouldn't it be good if someone saved the princess? But they might go, yeah, we don't care about her. And then you either have to force them, which is the railroading part, or you just have to follow along where they're going and then create something in front of them. It's remember those old cartoons where someone's running ahead of the train, laying tracks down? That's what jamming is.
Yeah.
But except someone else is on the train turning. They're turning the train, and you're like, oh, okay, now we're going this way. And now we're going this way. So you start small. You know, start like one village. Have minor threats and minor things that the early young players are dealing with, or young characters are dealing with. But remember, and this is the biggest lesson I learned both in writing and in running games and actually in playing it, leave yourself hooks. Oh, there's some goblins. Go take care of them because they're braiding the commerce.
Right.
Great. They go deal with that. Leave a hook in there somewhere. Well, they were getting funded by somebody. Or, you know, there's a strange symbol that the goblins are worshiping. I will leave hooks that are attached to nothing. They're just weird, and I write them down because I think of them at the time. And later, like, sometimes my players will even inadvertently help me with this. They'll be in some place like, well, I want to look up that symbol the goblins had. And I'll go, cool. I have no idea what it means. Let's see how they roll. And then, you know, and sometimes, and you just like, you backwards hook things. Doctor Who does this all the time. The new set of Doctor Who's, especially Moffat. He will leave hooks in early episodes that I don't think he ever plans on reconnecting until he does. And for the viewers or for the players, it seems like you planned it all out, and you definitely didn't. Again, it's that illusion of choice. It's, you know, it's as long as the players believe it's all connected, you've done your job. And if they were having fun, obviously.
Right. Alternatively, another way to do this is to decide, particularly if you've got some kind of sprawling world in peril, things are going to get worse and worse and worse. You just need to know what, and this is a more than minor just. You need to know what's going to happen in the world, regardless of what the players can do what they want. You need to be able to inform them about what's going on elsewhere. And if they don't want to deal with it, they don't. But that means the clock ticks and something else happens.
Nothing waits.
Yeah. And so you can't figure out when they're going to do what, but you know, if they're not going to deal with the problem will get worse, and then they'll have to deal with a different version of that problem.
Well, and that's just it. It's, you know, it's if you're one of the goals of this is, at least for me, is to present a living world, a world that feels real. And bad guys aren't going to sit around and go, well, I guess we'll just wait on this part one of the plan until the heroes come along.
That's when it feels like a railroad, right? When yeah. But
and
if they're in motion,
even in your world building, like some people will world build and they world build to their players or the character's level, which I always find to be a mistake. You know, you don't start them right next door to the CR-20 Tarask, obviously, unless it's a really cool campaign. But you know, if they decide to go to the deep dark forest that people have been warning them not to go into, and they get eaten by a dragon, they shouldn't really be surprised because people were warning them not to go there because there was a reason not to go there.
Right.
So it's not like, it's a lot of times you'll see in video games, it's scaled to them or scaled to your character. Like, it doesn't matter when you go to the castle. If you go early, you're fighting people level to you. If you go later, they're harder. And it's like, D&D shouldn't work that way. It should, in terms of like your world building. World building should be like a world. There's places that are safer and there's places that are definitely not safer. You should definitely have less safer places in your world. But that's just my personal preference. Yeah, so I mean, it's when you're designing games or running games, it's the same sort of thing. It's like you want things to feel real, but you also don't want to preload it with things. Michael in chat says players don't retreat and abandon their goals enough nowadays. They do if you work hard enough. No, it's true. It's the abandoning of the goal is probably I have seen some players retreat, but usually you have to like pretty much knock down most of them first. Or either that or they retreat because they've done something so dumb that you're just sitting back and eating a sandwich at this point, and you're just waiting. Like you're just like there's no way you planned it. I had a in that malfunctioning dungeon thing. I had a room that was had a dais with lightning bolts coming down onto this crystal from the ceiling, and the whole premise of the room is it was going to fill with water, or the players thought it was going to fill with water, and they're like, "Oh no! Once this lightning starts hitting the water, we're going to get electrocuted." What they didn't know was that the dungeon was so old that the thing was broken. It was only ever going to go up to their knees. But they panicked, and they basically started attacking the lightning emitters. And somebody rolled a 1, and I went, and I said, "You tell me what happens." And they said, "Oh, well, it diverts into the water." I went, "Okay." And so they started getting minor. They weren't very high level, so it was pretty much they were getting D6 electrical damage over each round, and they almost all died. Finally, like there was one player still up who got the door open and was like throwing their unconscious bodies out of the room so that they could get out before they all died. And I didn't do a thing. I did absolutely nothing.
That's
Which
awesome.
I can't tell if I feel guilty about or proud. Probably proud. There's a slight bit of guilt, but mostly proud.
I
yeah.
mean, and one of the things this makes me think of is if you ask the players, they would say that in a worst case scenario, they would say, well, the DM did this to us. But in point of fact, you had given narrative control to them. They just didn't know it.
Right. Yeah, asking them how they wanted this roll of the 1 to turn out. One of my favorite home rules that I have in my games is if you roll a 20, you pick up a D20, you roll another one. If you roll a second 20, you instantly kill whatever it was you were trying to kill. It's just an insta-kill rule. Of course, The bad guys have that too, but I tend not to use it a lot on players.
Well, I can tell you from the design aspect, that's one of those questions that comes up a lot. That came up a lot in building 3rd edition and around that. These rules like that. Well, if we give it to the DM, give it to the players, we have to give it to the monsters too, and you don't want that. But you're saying that it really is a DM judgment of whether you want to apply that.
I have fudged it more than one occasion. Like I've rolled the 220s and gone, "Oh, I'm not doing this for them right now." The best part of this rule, and it has happened. I had one of my players in my regular game, one shot at a Dracolich first round, dead. I figured this was gonna be like a half the session encounter. Killed it the first round. He was the second person in the initiative, and I went, "All right, that's the end of that." And the guy made it into a character thing. He was like, "I am Lich Killer," and that was his
Yeah.
name for the rest of the time. But the flip side of the rule is my favorite part. Is if you roll a 1 and you roll another 1, you could kill yourself. It has happened so many times. I had 2 players do it in the same battle,
Oh boy.
in the same room. Like, and then I make them describe how it happens. Like, I don't make it up. I'm just like, tell me how this happened. And he's like, I guess I swung my mace and I hit myself in the head. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly what happened. And I often don't have them dead, go to all the way down to death. It's
Right.
usually into death saves and stuff. Because I am not, I am fine killing off players if they've done it to themselves, if they've gotten themselves into a situation, or if it's in a thrilling, dramatic moment. If it's just sort of random, that's hard. I think I'm old school, but not old school enough where I like that type of rule.
Yeah.
Because it seems very punishing, especially if the players put a lot of investment into a character and then they're dead. Also, from my end of things, usually by the time this has happened, I put a lot of work into designing the campaign around one of those characters, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Now I have to reset everything now. But the drama, that's an important aspect of the game. Is and it goes into the making of it. How do you make it fun? Is you make it dramatic, and I know some GMs are like, this is the dice or the dice, and whatever the dice say is what the dice say, and I believe that up to a point.
Yeah. Well, again, and we come into another set of the what do you want out of the game? Like the people that
Yeah.
so often comes up in these conversations the fact that D&D is the way it is because it came out of a minis game. And there are people who still come to the game and want that level of the dice say what the dice say, and that's what happens. And that kind of miniature skirmish level attitude about what's happening on the table. Then the more you're leaning, the farther you get towards narrative, the less you want that.
I don't know. To me, like as a player, I want narrative control at times, but then there's times where I want the randomness of dice. Like I want it to be weird. Like I want those ones. I want those. Like if you roll a 1, yeah, that's
Yeah,
brilliant.
well, I'm talking in the extreme. The people
Well, true.
who come from that, that's what they want. Period. It is
Yeah.
a dice rule, and the farther you go in a narrative, the more you want to have subtle flexibility. Maybe you want none of that. That's pretty far the other end of it. But
Yeah.
what you're talking about is a nice middle. Sometimes when you use the dice have influence. The dice have power.
Oh yes,
But
they do.
it's moderated either by you or by the character, either on screen or off screen,
That's
by what will help with the narrative to make that work.
And the ideal in an ideal situation is the players are driving it. Like they're
Right.
the ones. I love it when my players are like, let me put it this way: if I never have to say, "What are you doing now?" That is
Right.
gold. I've yet to ever have a game where I've never said that, but that's the dream. Is it because that means that your players are driving the narrative? If you're reactive to them instead of them being reactive to you, then you're in the sweet spot. And it's hard. It's hard to get people to, I think, any player to everybody to get into that mindset at the same time. I see it in players back and forth, and it ebbs and flows, but which is hard when people see Critical Role and then they come and play for the first time and they're like, we want that. I'm like, well, that's scripted. They're playing,
Right.
it's scripted for the most part. Like, they're definitely playing the game, but there is a set that they know what they're doing, and they're professionals. These are professional actors. They are playing off each other in a very specific way that you're not going to find that in a home game unless everybody is really working at it, and because that's their job,
Yeah.
you know, and they're brilliant at it. I mean, I can't, some people get down on Critical Role, and I'm like, why? It is, they are, it is, it's like showing what we would all like our games to be, but in a natural way, not in a like done for entertainment sort of way.
Right. Well,
Um,
I certainly, um, I don't, there's a point where this was a more controversial statement than I think it is now, but the current explosion of popularity for role playing games
yeah,
is on the backs of Critical Role. I mean
100%.
that so uh, we always have always said the best way to learn a game is to be taught it by someone who's playing it, and
Yeah,
in the early days that was not possible unless you had someone who'd played it, which is
right.
pretty rare. Nowadays, Critical
Just watch that.
Role, yeah,
Yeah,
you spend hours learning how to play before you ever play.
that's how it's the only. I have to confess, watching somebody play it online was the only way I learned how to play Tales from the Loop and Numenera, because those two systems are different enough where I was reading the rules, but I wasn't quite getting it. Um, I gotta say, I don't. I'm not someone who sits and watches Critical Role, and I think it's
Right.
mostly because, yeah, for when it was beginning, and it was, it's still super popular. When it was really launch and it was really like coming out like gangbusters, I had two kids and it was COVID, and I just didn't have time. Um, but I have friends that are regulars. They watch it whenever it's on, and I watch them in parts, and it's great. Out here in LA, there's a group called Happy Jacks Podcasts who do games. And I've been on a couple of their games, and I've listened to their games, and it's a different thing, like either watching it or just listening to a game being played. And had you asked me 20 years ago, I would have gone, there's no way I would be interested in doing that.
Right.
But if I was on a car trip and I listened to an entire Tales from the Loop campaign arc, or there was another one where I was jogging, and I found a Call of Cthulhu, like I think they were doing Call of Cthulhu, but they were all nursery rhyme characters in like a pulp, like murder mystery, like Raymond Chandler-esque world. It was very
That's
amusing,
awesome.
but and it's brilliant. I mean, and you know, when I started playing games, this goes back to the thing that we didn't do at the beginning.
Right.
Like I think D&D swept through my high school when I was like 14, 15, and we all cheated and we were gods by like the third day, and then
Right.
it died out. And I really didn't play again until college, where I played a little bit. I went to Brown for medieval studies, which prepares you for nothing. In case anybody was wanting to learn medieval studies, there's not a lot of jobs go. Well, do you know your medieval history and literature? You'd be surprised how little that question comes up. But I really started playing when I moved to LA, because I moved out here to work in the film industry, and I met a bunch of friends, and my friend group, we're all medievalists. And so we do medieval reenactment with the Society for Creative Anachronism. And which is like, for those of you who don't know, it's like Ren Fair, except you're not doing it for other people, you're just doing it for yourself. And we do non-choreographed heavy combat. So, full armor, solid wood swords packing at each other. That's how I dislocated my kneecap. Anyway,
But that's another story.
yeah. Actually, this is the helmet I wear when I do it, in the back here.
Nice.
Um,
Nice helmet.
it's thick because I get hit in the head a lot. Anyway, so I started playing out here because somebody had a game, and that's when I sort of first discovered D&D again. And so this had to have been late 90s.
Right.
And back then, if you said to someone, "Oh, I play D&D," they'd go, Okay, nerd. Like there was no, it wasn't like, oh, you're a Satanist, as it was, there wasn't that Satan's panic thing, but it was not cool to be a gamer.
Right.
You were, now, like I mentioned to somebody at the airport, they were like, what do you do? You get to chatting with somebody. What do you do? I said, I design role playing games. Like, that is so cool. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, times
When
have
did
changed.
that happen?
Yeah. Like, my daughter, when she went to college, she called me and she goes, there's so many people here that know Kobold Press. And because of you, I am so cool. And I went, you're welcome, sweetie. I gave up a lucrative screenwriting career just so you could have friends in college.
Worth every penny.
To be fair, it wasn't that lucrative a screenwriting career, but yeah, that's not the point. Yeah, I mean, so it's just funny how it's there's a cachet value to, like, I play D&D, and there's so many more people who are doing the industry, and it's easier.
All right, so I want to sidestep a little because this is a question that I want to have. This is just for me, and that's so tell me more about your screenwriting career.
Okay.
And this is going to segue into some of how it connects to what we're doing here, but I'm curious to hear about your screenwriting career.
So, I've always written, always written stories, and when I went to Brown, they weren't big on speculative fiction like fantasy and sci-fi. They primarily focused on, at the time, on language poetry, which is a very strange poetic art form in which you put words that don't mean anything together, and the reader's supposed to draw their own meaning from it, which I thought was sort of dumb. And it's very possible that I am just not knowledgeable enough on that art form to know the value of it. But at the time, as a, snotty college kid, I thought it was dumb. So when I graduated, with this degree in medieval studies, it doesn't prepare you for anything. So I got a job in LA and came out and worked at a TV production company, and mostly reading scripts. And what I realized after a while was that people couldn't write because some of these were written really terribly. And I went, well, screw that. I'm going to go to film school and I'm going to learn how to do this. Because I've always written, and I taught myself to read when I was 3, and I speed read, and so I go through a couple hundred books a year. So I've always read, and so I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I went to UCLA and was lucky enough that I got this mentor, a man named James Hart, who wrote Hook and Contact and Dracula, Tuck Everlasting, lots of movies. And he was my Yoda, is my Yoda still. And he taught me how to craft stories and how to write screenplays. Get in and at UCLA, I don't want to knock UCLA because they also teach you how to do this. But UCLA, like your first year of film school, they teach you how to write scripts, but they teach you how to write the first draft. And that's easy. First draft is the easiest thing you can do in a screenplay. Right. Because it's after that the work starts. Because then you have to fix it. And, I will go through 20 drafts before I show it to anybody. And then you get producers. And then, so I started writing, I was lucky enough to sell some scripts. Nothing ever got made. But the thing you learn very early in the film industry is that doesn't matter as long as you got paid.
Right.
Like the second it leaves your hands, your caring about it stops. Because you've been paid, they wanted it this way, and the answer is always yes. Which actually is something that helped me in running games, because I learned to go, sure, that's a great idea, but could we also, yes and, or yes but, and, learning that in the film industry, then it's also helped you with players when they go, well, I want to do this. That's a great idea. Aliens, perfect. Let's put them in there. How about, and you sort of have to learn what hills you want to die on. Like, and in game design, a lot of times I'll talk to young designers, and they think everything is great. Like every single thing is gold, and it's not. I mean, like my own stuff is. I look at like some of my stuff and go, "Ooh, I really shouldn't have put that in there." And being able to peel stuff out is really important. It's you want to start late into the scene, get out early. Like you don't linger. And in game design, it's the same way. It's like, you don't, who cares what's between A and B? Put an encounter table in there.
Right.
Also, like, is it important? Where's the adventure in A to B? If the adventure is B to C, A to B can be a paragraph and then move on. And so I started screenwriting, and then I stumbled, almost accidentally into open design. And over time, I ended up gravitating more toward game design than I did screenwriting. And this is a statement that's going to, for those of you who are freelancers out there, it's going to probably sound really dumb, but I was actually ended up getting paid more regularly doing freelance game design than I was doing screenplays.
Well, more regularly, but not as much per pop.
Oh, definitely not as much. I mean, I'm part of the Writers Guild, and so there's minimums. They're really, the whatever cents a word that we have for the industry standard is nothing compared to how much you get paid for a feature-length screenplay. But when your feature-length screenplay happens every 3 years or 4 years, it's not exactly regular. Luckily, I have a wife who's very tolerant of me and makes a nice, steady paycheck. And so I freelanced pretty much from 2006 till last September. I did a brief stint where I was a lead designer co-lead designer at Draco Studios, but mainly freelancing. And over time, it just became. I still do occasional screenplay work, but mostly I do game design these days.
Right. So, have you had anything that's been produced, or just sold a bunch of stuff?
A lot of money for various things.
Yeah. Well, I remember. I have two things I remember. And this is your show. Well, it's my show, but I can do this on my own, so I won't tell the whole stories.
It was my show.
If you guys want to hear them, let me know. Maybe I'll make a separate video with these full-length stories. But I was visiting a friend who I knew from working at West End Games, who was a writer on Hercules and Xena. Was a writer on Xena.
Oh, sure.
And when I came down to visit, they had a script that was due, so he and his writing partner used to work at the local Barnes & Noble. In LA, if you went to a Barnes & Noble, you would go to any local Barnes & Noble, they'd have speakers. But in LA, you get people who are speakers from the industry. And the speaker that was happening that night was the script writer or producer on American Pie the year it came out. This was the summer it came out. And they had booked him months earlier, before that came out, just because of his other work. But now it was like, the screenwriter of American Pie. And that's the first time I learned the lesson you're talking about, which is in order to be successful, you need to write a bunch of stuff and sell it. And then if it never gets paid, like you're saying, my friends who have the most, who've made the most in Hollywood are not the ones whose names you know. They're the ones who have sold an idea on the back of a napkin. They've got a good idea for how to pitch it, and they've got a lot of they're quick on their feet in conversation. And when someone says they want it, like you say, they yes and then sell it.
Well, and there's people. I mean, there's people who make a great living in Hollywood, who all they do is fix scripts. Their names are never on them. Carrie Fisher, made a living from Star Wars. She was one of the top script doctors. Like they would call her in to do dialogue fixes over and over and over and over again. That's and her name's was not on most things. And she was brilliant at it. but what it what that did teach me was that not to be too like not to be I'm invested in a project at the time,
Right.
and then once it's done, I move on. Because in LA, like when you sell a screenplay, once you get paid and you hand it in, you're out. There's no like there's very unless you get to a certain level where you have approval when they make changes during filming and stuff. Usually, you find out what the movie's like when it comes out.
Right.
You know, and
I
so
hear. I hear that. I mean, um, the conventional wisdom for people not in for writers who don't actually work in Hollywood is that that's different if you're writing for television than it is
yes,
if you're
yeah,
writing.
television is much different. Television is much more. You have your writer room, and I honestly I worked television on the production side. So I never did it. Like by the time I started writing screenplays, I was doing features mostly and like,
Right.
bigger, like long form stuff. But, the funny thing is writing is sort of writing,
Yeah.
when I started doing game design, all the lessons that I learned about screenplays, they all still apply,
Yeah.
you know, the three act structure is there, but it's not you're not bound to it anymore because you have players who are going to change things.
Right.
But you rising tension, increasing stakes, it's all the same. It's because stories like are stories. The hero's journey is an integral part of our like storytelling subconscious for a reason. Just
Right.
because Joseph Campbell wrote it down doesn't mean he didn't invent it. It was something he was
he
identifying.
was he was describing something that existed over centuries.
And because we are people who tell stories or learn, hear stories growing up, when we play a game like D&D, we unconsciously still want those beats. We want those feelings. We want we want the hero's journey. You there's a reason why you see the same sort of characters or NPCs like
Right.
the wise mentor, the cocky sidekick guy. They're classic tropes that people gravitate toward. And you
Right.
can use that to help and to hurt. You can use it to satisfy that need, or you can turn it on its head to surprise your players.
All right. Two things. One is I'm going to stop drawing now. This is where the drawing has gotten to for today.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, I think I'm ready to move on to inks and colors on that. So I will put that aside because it's just going to sit there. So best to take it off screen. Let it stop taking up real estate. Let you have a little more of the spotlight. But the folks who watch the show know I will get back to this in the future. I've been doing work in progress videos a bunch. I've still got a few to go. This now goes out the end of the queue for work in progress. Which I suppose, if we look over here, that means there are 4 drawings ahead of it in the queue. But I've been blowing through those pretty quickly. So maybe sometime this fall, I'll probably finish that up. I look forward to the
nice.
day where I'm back to being caught up and I finish it the same week that I started. But that's not this week. Um,
Yeah, that's when I start going. Yeah, it'd be great when I get ahead of the writing curve. And
yeah.
oh,
Uh, and we will mention this again in a little bit. Remember that the Northlands Sagas is currently kickstarting right now. Go to koboldpress.com and look under Northlands, and it'll give you a link to the Kickstarter because I wasn't smart enough to preload the Kickstarter into something I could put on the screen. Anyway, it would have been a crazy ass URL. Better just go to koboldpress.com and look
ooh,
under Northlands.
Michael, I'm going to write that down. No, I am interested in that.
Uh, so let me get out of here to back to
Ooh.
just us. And what you were just saying actually leads to the this big question that Michael in chat sent to me ahead of time, and I'm going to read it. It's like 6 questions buried in one, some of which we've already talked about, and some
Okay.
of which will make a good set of discussion for our last segment here. So it says, here's the obvious question. How are one-shots adventures or full campaigns alike different from the structure of a TV episode, movie, or miniseries?
Okay.
And then other related questions to compare video and gaming, just kind of what it's like writing the two things. Do you ever storyboard your RPG stuff? Uh, have you ever worked on a film or series Bible, and how is that compared to world building for an RPG? Yes, those are the questions that are in there.
And you'll have to remind me of them because I'll hit one and then I'll forget what the other ones are.
That's all right.
But like the first one, I mean, is a episode of a TV show different than a one shot game? No, they're really not. I mean, if you think about it, the scope is sort of the same, right? I mean, it's you have a beginning and it's going to a certain place, just like a TV episode. Not like a comedy, like Friends sometimes had episodes that never went anywhere at all.
Right.
But I mean, if you have like 24 is usually a great example, that show, because that had a very set sort of thing.
See, I find that answer interesting and confusing, because to my end, the difference is in outlining they're the same, but in writing a script for anything, you've got to answer all the how questions.
Right.
And in writing an adventure, you answered none of them.
Right. So, but in design, and this is sort of a thought that just occurred to me now. So if I might stumble on the description here a second, but in game design is a series of questions that you're not providing the answers to.
Right.
You're providing notes about how to answer it, but it's up to the players to figure that out. In a TV show, you're providing the answers and the questions and the answers, because you're the one who's doing everything.
Right.
And you're if you were to record your one shot and then film it and then play it, ideally it would be the episode. Like if you were like running a game where it was the one episode, that's how it would play out. Whether or not you can script to that is the difference between railroading and having an open game world.
Right.
I don't tend to storyboard, because I tend to think in outline form, just because I came up through academia with medieval studies, and so I outline obsessively. Mainly because I know
like to work that medieval studies in every chance you get.
No, it's not used. It's the only time I get to use it. The DM writes the plot, and the PCs give a producer note. Yeah, unfortunately, the PCs tend to be like the really grouchy actors who like storm off into their trailers. So I tend to work in outlines only because I know if I don't, I'll write forever and never get to the end, because I'll get into the writing part and I'll just be enjoying that and won't finish. And usually it's because a lot of that is because as a freelancer, you have a word count. Like they're like, write this adventure, you have 12,000 words, go. And you're like, okay, great. I have to fit everything I want to do into this small space. The times where I've written adventures without a word count, they have tended to be long, and they didn't. And like looking back at them, I'm like, ooh, this didn't need to be this long at all. Word counts are great. I love word counts because I will write forever if I'm not stopped. And thankfully Wolfgang and various people at Kobold Press have said, no, this is the word count you have. I started working full time in September. I worked for them since the beginning, and was lucky enough to I am employee 16 at Kobold Press. I know, right? I should get a baseball shirt. But the funny thing is like, I've already been told that I'm not allowed to make any more mimics. You make one mimic moon, and they get really antsy about the whole thing. So fine. Wolfgang is somewhere going, mimics again. But yeah, so I think you have to outline. The outlining for a written adventure is much different than outlining for your home game. Your home game, you should not outline. You should have some notes,
Yeah.
maybe one or two adventures ahead, if that. Like my prep for games is I will write down the names of all the PCs and write down one thing I want to highlight for that character this session. And then I will spend an hour trying to figure out what music I want to play. I mean, that's the extent of my. And the reason that is the extent is because one of my players gave me a hard time for scripting things, and
Right.
gave me such a hard time that now we have this running gag that like you have 10 minutes of game prep, go. I'm like, okay, 10 minutes.
Now that's a show.
Right, 10 minutes of game prep. The that's an interesting question. So yeah, so storyboarding is, if you're a very visual person, storyboarding is great. I'm just, for me, I work much better with text. But I think that if you're writing for publication, you have to outline. You have to know, because a lot of times you have to know where things are going and you have to plan for them. And you want to, because the great moments in a in a written adventure is when like they get to the end and the players realize the thing they found at the beginning is now important. And granted, I'll tend to get to the end and go, oh, it'd be really cool if they found a thing at the beginning, and then go back and write the thing at the beginning. But that's what revisions are for. But it's outlining is part of that. At home, I don't outline. I just sort of have these vague ideas, and eventually it all comes together because you have time.
Yeah. No, there's a big difference. There's a huge difference between writing for your own campaign and writing for something that's going to be published, whether it's a one-shot adventure or a campaign setting. Right? When you're writing those products, you are preparing. It's a meal in a box, right? You've got to give them everything they need. And I tell you, one of the things I hated outlining too. I think everyone I know, when they come into the industry, hates outlines. And most people, after working for a while, come to love outlines, because it just takes one or two projects of doing it and seeing how good the results are, how much better you can do what you want. And you come in thinking outlining's going to box me in, it'll ruin my creativity. But doing it, you find out, oh, no, it's setting up the guidelines, which really let my creativity go. And anything that's there can be erased and rewritten. Like you're not beholden to your outline.
Well, and that's a great note for gaming in general. Like when you're running your home games, like nothing's set in stone. Like if your players go off on some tangent and they're not going to go to the temple you just spent 4 hours figuring out, save it. It'll come up again.
All right.
What was the last part of the question?
Yeah.
I think there's a third part.
The last part. So my quick answer about the storyboarding, as someone who is both a verbal and visual guy, is that I would never storyboard an adventure for exactly the reasons we were talking about. It's the same thing. If you're storyboarding, you're answering the how, rather than setting it up. You are.
I mean, I suppose you could storyboard the scenes. Like, this is this location, this is that location.
Yeah.
But
that's
you
not
wouldn't want to resolve, like, they killed the thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I do sketches for this is what the thing will look like. But the storyboard, again, for me, just what it means to me, it's a series of things which show this happens and that happens and this happens and that happens. And then you're doing too much. But the question we were going to get into for the last little bit is, have you ever worked on a film or a series Bible, and how does that compare to doing a campaign or a world setting?
They're not fundamentally different. So I haven't worked on a series Bible, but I've worked on plot decks or movie decks, which are, for those of you who don't know, when you're trying to sell someone on a movie or a movie concept you want to do, you'll make something called a deck, which tends to be a visual representation of here's the world and and it's very exciting. Here's the actors and here's the actors we're thinking for these characters and this is the plot that happens and here's how we would do it, and here's the locations and it's all visual and it's basically it's a series of photos with text and it's and in that way it sort of sums up the feeling of what the movie is. I remember when I first got into the movie industry, I picked up the old Star Trek Bible because at that time, Next Generation was had just passed, but Star Trek at the time was accepting open screenplays, and I was like, "Ooh, maybe I'll write a screen." And so I picked it up, and it's world building. It's a world building book, and that's really all it is. World building for me is a lot like those books, like a story Bible, but again, it goes back to your point saying it can't be set in stone because players will change the world and there'll be stuff look, my camera's all weird. Players will change things and might look at it and go, "Ooh, that's much better. Ooh, I gotta change this part now." And I think anyone who's run games for a significant amount of time knows that moment where the players go, "Oh, well, clearly that shadow that we saw over there because of these other things, there's definitely a dragon nearby." And you're like madly erasing things going, "Yes, there's a dragon." But you would not plan for a dragon at all, but now there is. And, that's sort of the give and take. Like you want to be responsive to your players. I get more world building done in my home games just by listening to my players guess things. Like the ideas they come up with are things I never would have thought of because you sort of get locked into a series of decisions, and you sort of it got like because you world built things, it sort of guides your thinking, and your players come from left field because they don't know all the information, so they're making guesses, and sometimes those are terrible, and you're like, how could you possibly think that? And sometimes they're brilliant, and you're like, that's gold. I got to use that.
Why didn't I think of that?
Right. So Chris has an interesting question.
Well, my take on that is for RPG world building, you got to remember you should always be doing things from you're looking across the valley from the top of the hill, and you're painting what you see, and to some extent as you get closer in, you're painting the building from across the street. But all of your world building should be from as much from a distance as possible, because the story, and that's not storytelling. That's it's your world. That's the milieu that the story is taking place in. That's world building to me. And then the story will have a lot more of details have to go here, and you need to know who this is.
I will confess that I like playing established worlds because I don't have to do all the work. Because the game I run at home is Eberron.
Right.
I think Keith Baker's initial thing was amazing, and I love the books that have come out. If I have run an occasional world where I was like occasional campaign where I went, I'm going to build my own world. My problem is I'm too much of a medievalist still, or I'm too much of a historian. I want to know what I want to know what the nations are, so I can start feeding a plot.
Right, but you're looking at that. You're looking at that from a step backwards.
Right. And it's a lot of work, and I'm going. I have a job, and I don't have enough time to really do this the way I'd want, so I'm going to play this. So, but I think that my daughter, for example, the game she's running in college has this she knows every nation. And I think that's perfectly great.
Yeah.
If you have that much time. But the thing is, you can't it can't be written in stone. It can't be unchangeable because either the players will never go there and then you've wasted a lot of time, or the needs of your campaign will change where now the nation that was full of evil mages, you're like, they really need allies. Maybe they're not so evil anymore.
Yeah.
You're locked into that thinking. Now you've written yourself into a corner.
Yeah. All right. You were about to look at one of the questions from the chat. Maybe
Well,
Chris
Chris has heard
Andrews.
very good
That
things about Kobold Press, and the good things you've heard are completely true. The bad things you've heard are just lies. Um,
dirty, rotten lies.
that's right. Do we feel that that Kobold Press represents the mission statement of the old TSR days, the most of any company today, including WotC? What was the mission statement of the old
That's
TSR
yeah. I was
days?
read that question. I'm like, that's a leading question because what was the mission statement of the old TS? I worked there and I can't answer that question.
Please, someone buy our games.
Yeah, I mean, each of the mission statement for any company, for any large company, any company that large, the mission statement is put out stuff that's going to sell enough that we will
Yeah, it's
survive
funny.
till the next fiscal quarter.
Yeah, so Kobold Press, the thing that keeps the company going is the Kickstarters. That's where we make the money to keep the games going. And you know, when this in Northlands, for example, people were a little miffed because what happened was D&D Beyond came to us and said, do you have anything you want to put on the site? Do you have anything that you would put on? And we went, well, and I was in outlining for Northlands. And I pivoted from writing Tales of the Valiant to D&D 2024 because it is such a financial boon.
Yeah.
To be on D&D Beyond. There's just what it exposes you to a lot more players. You have this revenue that comes in, and as a company, they need the revenue. But people were like, you created Tales of the Valiant. How are you abandoning? We didn't actually abandon it. We're also doing a Tales of the Valiant version. But I can see people's point. And this is the problem that WotC got into, or Wizards of the Coast got into when they shot themselves in the foot. Well, it was mostly Hasbro, but, was that this is a strange business because it is a business, but it's also very personal for people. And so when Wizards of the Coast was like, we're going to drop the open game license and we're going to, monetize things, people lost their minds because they went, how could you do this to us? And I get that point of view. But I also get the point of view, like I even get Hasbro's point of view, who are going, when they bought Wizards of the Coast, the last thing let's be honest, they bought it for Magic the Gathering because that is printing money.
They bought it from Pokemon.
Yeah,
which
Pokemon
which was also a
Gathering.
terrible idea because that wasn't lasting either. But
yeah, but when when they tried to do all this stuff, people were like, this is our plaything. This is the thing that we're doing. But I could see Hasbro going, wait, we bought this company and you put out a product that anyone can use for free and make their own thing that they're making money off of, that we're not making money off of. No business works like that in the world. So it's not surprising to me that Hasbro doesn't get it.
Yeah. Well,
and I think Kobold Press, our mission statement is we want to make games that people play. We also want people to buy them so we can have jobs. Yeah. But, we are, from the beginning, it's like we make stuff that we want to make people want to play these. Until Northlands, we hadn't really put out a Midgard book in a long time because setting books don't sell very well.
Right.
And I know that a lot of Midgard fans were not happy about it, and I get it. But also, we need to have jobs in order to make the things you want to play.
Yeah, yeah. And once you're in this as a profession, you need to temper what you want to do with what will sell. What will right. Unless you're coming at it, unless you've got you're bankrolling yourself, and it doesn't matter if you make $1 or not.
Let's be honest. That you have Wizards of the Coast up here. Like, where's my camera? Here. You have Wizards of the Coast. They make the most money in this industry, and then you have like Paizo and a couple of others that are on this secondary tier. The rest of us are down in the basement. Kobold Press has 16 employees. And like for the longest, like this is the most employees we've had ever.
Right. And when you say that, most of them are not directly creative. They are not the people making.
There are two. Celeste Conowith and myself are the only game designers on staff. There are other people who write some things, but we are the only two full-time game designers. Though we have editors, we have layout people, we have art people, and we fabulous, fabulous.
Right.
Everyone who works there is the job they do is incredible. And look, the quality of the books that we put out, I mean, I think are better than Wizards in a lot of respects. Most respects, let's be honest. But it's from the outside, we look like a company that is big.
Yeah, that what this is something that this is what I didn't say in our pre-chat, and I said, "Oh, let's not talk about that because it might come up in the conversation," and so fans have a difficulty really understanding how big these differences are because the best of as you say, there's Wizards and there's Paizo and maybe one or two others, and there's a whole bunch down here, and the amount of money that they're making is so much less. Yeah. But the products, the goal of these people down here is to make something that looks great and looks like it belongs on the shelf next to D&D, and you succeed like that, and that change. Everyone thinks, well, then you must be succeeding. You must be making this kind of living in this stratosphere.
No. Well, I was trying to explain how Kickstarter works to my father, who worked for Goldman Sachs and retired in the mid 90s. And he's like, wait, so they're just buying a book? I'm like, yeah. But I'm like, Wizards of the Coast last year, their revenue was like $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
You know how many books we'd be making if we made $1.5 billion of revenue? I mean, like, if we miss a Kickstarter, it's a problem. It's a big problem.
And the Kickstarters, we're talking about funding in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
Not billions, not millions, very low hundreds of low hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, if Northlands gets to $500,000, we'd be ecstatic. And if everybody here would go buy like 5 or 6 copies each, that'd be real slow.
I tell you, I want that because that means I'd get more work too.
There you go. I mean, so yeah, it's a weird business because from the outside, the products we're putting out, and it's not just us; it's it's a lot of other companies.
Yeah, Green Ronin, Monty Cook Games, they all look like as good or better than what
dollars in there, and it's not. Just very talented. I mean, the artists alone, is the art quality of that the people are doing is just so amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brian, thank you. Like I said before we went on, an hour and a half was going to go by, and we've got an hour and 45 minutes. So we did it. We shattered the record. And right. I could go on chatting. I could go on chatting and drawing for hours, but I'm going to be kind to you, and I'm going to stop.
Well, you have to have me back then so we can have more conversations.
I would love to. So before we go, I know we just finished pitching it, but what do you want to pitch? What should people be looking for?
You should look for the Northlands. It's kickstarting right now. We funded it in an hour. It's on koboldpress.com. Was really one of my favorite parts of the Kickstarter is I have a friend who's a rocket engineer who is also a smith because, of course she is. And she made 2 Viking type A swords. One of them is a pattern weld Damascus that were 2 high-level tiers that went real fast, but they are statted items in the book.
Nice.
So when, and hopefully we do well enough with this where we can replicate this because I as a customer, being able to get an item, a physical item that is a statted magic item in the book is amazing.
Right.
But if you need a kind of Icelandic Norse thing to drop into your home campaign, the Northlands works if you're playing Midgard, or if you're not playing Midgard, you can just drop and play. It comes with there's a world book which is full of gods and monsters and player options, and then it also has Northland Sagas, which is a full-fledged adventure path where you are working for Loki, trying to stop Ragnarok that he's inadvertently started.
Which is the drawing that I was doing the cover for today.
And one of the cool things about Sagas is when you begin the adventure path, each character gets a rune stone, which we have a deck that you can actually get cards for. and is a non-attunable, or it doesn't require attunement, but it's a magic item that improves during the course of the campaign based on what you do with it. And leading up to when in the final adventure in Asgard, where you're trying to help the gods rechain Fenris, each runestone is related to a god, and if you are near your god that you have the runestone for, you unlock its most powerful abilities.
This is its ultimate format.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
All right, so get on out there. KoboldPress.com. Look for Northlands. It'll take you to the Kickstarter. And
if you have more questions about Northlands, I'm always on the Kobold Press Discord on the Northlands channel, answering questions and just hanging out. So right. We're all of us Kobold people are pretty responsive on the Discord for people who have questions.
So again, thank you, Brian. Hold on, I'm going to do an outro, and then you and I can say ta-ta.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Okay, there we go. That was my conversation with Brian Suskind, game designer for Kobold Press, and the man behind, among other things, the currently kickstarting Northlands Sagas adventure path series of adventures. Fun night tonight. I just love chatting and drawing. I will be back. Well, so I got the drawing to where it's at. I will finish it in an upcoming episode of Work in Progress. And until then, keep tuned here. If you want to follow what's going on the show, what I finish, and if you want to be the first to see it, then you want to subscribe to the 50 Years in the Dungeon.substack.com newsletter. Because when it's done, that's where I show it. And then a week or two later, I show the rest of the world. You want to be on the inside. You want to see it as soon as possible. That's where you go. Also, I'll tell you everything else that's going on in the show and give you behind-the-scenes info. I'm not sure who my guest might be next week or if I'll be back at Work in Progress. You'll have to come back and find out. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get pinged as soon as the episode is set up. If you subscribe to the Substack, I'll tell you even earlier. Tomorrow night, I will be here for another episode of Random Encounters, the improv cartooning show, I do every week, where we use random encounter tables and input from you in the chat to determine a randomly generated drawing prompt, and then I draw it for you. Three drawings a night. It's lots of fun. Come and join us. What else? What else do I want to say? I want to say, go to the koboldpress.com, find Northlands, go to their Kickstarter. But also, if you're liking what I'm doing and you want to get more involved, consider becoming a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/Stanex. That goes to helping to underwrite what I'm doing here, make sure that I don't have to spend time doing, or take some of the time I'm currently spending on projects for other people and spend it on doing more of this. You want more of this? That's how you get more of this. That's how you get more of this. Patreon.com/Stanex. So, please give us a like, give us a thumbs up or a heart, whatever it is on the platform you're watching. Leave a comment after the show is done. That helps a lot. And until then, take care, everyone, and I'll see you around. Bye.